And welcome back to Legends of Lake Howell. Today we are here with Beatriz Ramirez. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I understand that you're a musician. Can you talk to us about some of your current projects?
Yeah, I am an oboist and I play English horn as well. I am currently in a mixed quintet called Answers, which is a lot of fun. We're all classically trained. It's kind of an improvisatory, composed quintet group, which is really fun. It's oboe, violin, bass, electric guitar, and a vibra kit, which is a pretty cool ensemble. And so we have an album out. It's been about a year since that's come out. And I'm also in a band called Lost Noises Office, which is my first non-fully classical group. So it's like kind of interesting to, like, our songwriter isn't really, she's not classically trained at all, so she doesn't know like notation very well and like all that stuff. But so like trying to figure out like the songs that are in her head and like interpreting that into like the oboe and violin kind of stuff that we're doing right now.
So that's pretty interesting. So how does that work? Who does she write the music?
She writes the music.
Okay.
So she'll come in and she's like, I wrote this, I have this song idea. And so she'll play on her, she's the keyboardist as well, she's a singer. So she'll play the music and we're just like, oh, that's really cool. And so we just kind of have to, she generally knows the key that she's in, so we're just kind of figuring out like how to orchestrate it pretty much. Like how do we like get what she's performing and what the ideas that she's looking for into like a band setting with a violin and an oboe. So
in comparison with the quintet, which one would you say stretches you more as a musician? What's more of a challenge for you?
They're both challenging, but very different. I think the trio group that I'm in, Lost Noises Office, that one was a bit more challenging because you go into the rehearsal and you're just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I'm not given any kind of like guideposts or outline, or like I have to figure out the form of her piece. I have to figure out like where I'm going musically, like where she's changing keys, where she's like sometimes the rhythm that she's in. It's like, is this in like it feels like a 7 something, but like is it actually 14? Like what is your phrasing here? And then it's like it switches meter all the time. So like that part's really challenging to get that to like performance ready, and it takes a lot more rehearsals because it's not like you're given a specific guidepost. So
the quintet looks like an eclectic group. Was that just coincidental, or was it intentional that I wanted a certain type of instrumentation, or just how did that work out?
It was kind of based, we had my husband and I, a couple years back, we had a festival that we were doing, and so there was this ensemble that came through it, which was pretty much what this one is, but it had piano instead. And it was just kind of fitted to who we were at the time. And so our pianist moved to DC, and then we were like, well, what are we going to fill this with? And so we found this violinist who was amazing, who was living in town at the time, and it just kind of rounded out everything, and I think it works really well. It's partially composed music, so like the album that we just recorded was of my friend Brandon during the pandemic. He wrote this piece, and so we recorded that. But he's a jazz player, so it's kind of in the like sense of jazz. It's not jazz, but it's like where it's written out tunes and then there's intentional improvisational breaks that can span for however long. So like it's really interesting to see where that goes, and you see everyone's kind of developing, and over time it's really changed as we've grown as people. So it's really exciting. Now
you mentioned that you play oboe and English horn, instruments that are somewhat similar, but what are the differences between the two of them?
For me, English horn's a little easier. It's easier and harder. It's bigger, so the reeds are more forgiving. It's harder because you can't find English horn reeds. Like I usually make my own reeds. I had to learn how to make English horn reeds, and like no one was there to like help me figure that out. So I'm like, well, this is how I make an oboe reed. I'll make it a little bit different. But the reeds last longer. The instrument's easier to play. To me, I like it a lot more. It's heavier. That's the main thing. Is like it's harder to play longer because unless you get like the whole neck strap set up, it's just heavy. But it's a different key. So it's C is oboe, and then English horn's an F. So. Now,
I don't think when I was in school they had an English horn. Is that something that you picked up after high school, or when did you pick up English horn?
After high school. So it was, I actually picked it up in undergrad because we didn't have anyone that was there to play it. When I started my undergrad at UCF, there were like 2 oboe players. So you have a first oboe and a second oboe, and then there's no English horn. So it was just kind of a disaster because I had my teacher's like 25-year-old English horn reed that I was playing on, and I'd never like held one before, and it's like, go play planets. And I'm like, okay, this is great.
Let's talk about that process of making reeds, because you mentioned that earlier. How do you, where do you find I don't know the correct word to say it, to make the reeds.
All the like materials?
Yeah, the materials,
yeah.
yes.
So the cane I order it from Germany.
Okay.
Because that's just the one I've been using for the longest time. It works well. Some people order it from France. I'm actually going to try growing my own cane because my backyard is actually like, I think, wet enough. And I met a guy from Venezuela who moved in. He plays oboe, and he's like, oh, he's on the coast. He's like, I grew my own cane. I was like, okay. But I currently order from Germany, and then you need knives and like these little staples, like a cork. It's like a little tube, and so you have like it comes in like a tube cane, and you have to like split it, then you have to gouge it to a specific thickness, then you have to shape it on this little thing to kind of get that shape, then you fold it over, and then you have to like whittle away at it. But it took me a long time.
So what's the difference between making your own reeds and just like going to the music store?
It depends. Some music stores have handmade reeds, and then it's just finding one that works with you, and then it's the consistency of how long it's been stored, where is it coming from? Is it coming from a cold climate? Is it someone local who's making it? Because it is wood, it does deteriorate, it gets thin, and it's like the smallest shavings can really make a difference. So like having my own reeds is like, I think it's like, the closest thing I can think of is like ballet dancers and their shoes. Like you get a certain shoe and then you beat it and you scrape things off so like it fits your feet. Like the reed like has to fit my mouth because my mouth is what's making the reed make the sound. So it's really just customizing and making it work for me.
So let's talk about the oboe. And I just remember from my time in band when the band director would stand up front and he would say, okay, who wants to play the oboe? And it's like crickets. You never heard anything. And then it was people who played the oboe, it was because they needed it for a certain part, or it was just the last instrument that was left.
Yeah.
How did you get started playing the oboe? Because it's such a unique instrument.
Yeah, it was actually my first choice. So I wanted to start playing an instrument in elementary school. My mom was like, you're not gonna like it, I'm not gonna pay for that. So when middle school came around and we had like the trials of instruments, I went to South Seminole, and at the time it was Dr. Silliman, and he pulled out an oboe, and I'm like, I have never seen that. I really like it. And so he let me try it, and I could not make a sound, and I was really frustrated by that whole thing. And so he's like, well, if you can make a sound by Friday, you can play it. And he's like, whatever, I don't care. So I came in every morning, and finally, like Thursday morning, I think I made it make any kind of sound. And he's like, all right, if you really want to play it. And that's just, I feel like that kind of encompasses the oboe. It's not a fun instrument all the time. It's kind of like, when you start out, like there's a lot of back pressure, so it feels like you're getting like punched in the stomach a lot. Like I think it takes a specific kind of personality to like want to be an oboist. And
it's just kind of an odd, it's a different sound. My son played the bassoon, and he was learning how to play it, and wow, yeah, it took a lot of patience.
Yes.
So you also played in college as well. What did you major in? What was your major?
I majored in the oboe.
Wow, okay, all right.
Yeah, when I went to UCF, I was originally going for, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be like an eye doctor. So I was a molecular microbiology major, which I should have known when I started it. I was not gonna like it because my senior year at Lake Howell, I dropped AP Bio and took ceramics. It was that first week of we're gonna have a quiz every morning, and I'm like I can't deal with that. So I dropped it for ceramics, and every morning I made pottery. It was really beautiful. But I should have known then that I probably wouldn't have been a doctor. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you majored in oboe. How do you major in oboe? What do you study?
Well, you study music, and so there's theory, there's history. Those are pretty much two big classes. There's all the performances you have to do. You have to learn to practice. You have your lessons. You have juries, which are fun and terrifying because you have to play in front of all the faculty, and then everyone tells you what's wrong when you're playing. So there's a lot of stress in it, and there's a lot of no credit classes that you have to do. And then at first I was an ed major, so I had some education class. And then I realized I didn't want to be a teacher. I don't think I have the persona for that. I don't know, it was hard. Teaching is really difficult, and it's
be a challenge.
It's a big challenge. And I really just wanted to play. So I switched to performance, and it's a lot of ensembles. We did contemporary stuff, so I had composition classes, there's orchestration classes that you have, like how to write music, how to understand music. Like if I give you a piece of music, how are you going to read this? Then you have to learn to play the piano for some reason, so that you have like to practice the piano on top of everything else. And you have juries and recitals and stuff to prepare for, like how to become a musician is kind of what the major is.
So you mentioned playing the piano. So how many instruments, different instruments, do you play in total?
Right now, I play the two. That's my main focus. But I have played piano, and I when I was at UCF and Lake Howell, I played tuba as well.
Played tuba?
That was my marching instrument.
So, and that was something that I was going to ask. Like, when you were a member of the Silver Regiment, they didn't have oboe and marching band, so you had to play something else.
I was a sousaphone player.
So you're a sousaphone player. Two distinct instruments. Is oboe, that's treble clef, tuba, bass clef. How did you like manage to go between the both of them?
It wasn't that hard. I had I'm like losing words. The section leader at the time, Caitlin, I would go to her house and she taught me how to play the tuba. She taught me the basics, and like the reading, like the different clefs wasn't too difficult because you go over it when you're in band, because it moves so slowly in middle school. Like you see both, and like you're constantly talking about like pretty much the grand staff the whole time, because you like the teacher's directing like, oh, tuba players, and you have trombones and you have trumpets, and you're just reading everything. So it wasn't too hard to do both, but it was good. So
you never thought about being a professional tuba player?
I think about it all the time. It is. It really is. I'm like, can I start a mariachi band and be the tuba player? Yeah, I really want to buy a tuba. It's like one of my next things to get at some point. I need a new oboe. Like, it's just the list of instruments that I want and things that I need never ends.
Have you played the tuba recently, or?
Not super well, but I have. My friend has a tuba, so I got to play that a little bit. So.
Are there any musicians that inspire you?
There's a lot. Locally, there's a jazz player, Danny Jordan, who I watched him play just solo flute, like it was 2012 at the OPO concert. He was out in the lobby, and just to command a room by improvising on the flute, like that to me is insane. Like I still don't know how to do that. Like how to just, I don't know. It's just the musicianship that he has and everything that he does is really inspiring.
Has there ever been a piece that you found to be like very challenging, that you just, it's very difficult and you had to practice over and over again until you felt that you were very comfortable with it?
There's a lot. And I don't know if I've ever truly felt comfortable in everything that I play. There's always things that go wrong and things that I want to improve on. So it's always, you have to just, I think it's like, I don't know if you ever talk to artists about when they're creating something and they always want to improve it, and you just need to let it go. You did it, you did this thing, come back to it later if you want, but like you move on to the next thing or you're going to get stuck in something forever. So like one of them is like the Strauss Concerto. I did that for my undergraduate, or my graduate auditions. I like performed that for schools. And like I still want to perform it, but it's one of those things like there's always details in it that I want to do better. But it's, it's challenging. Yeah. And the Barrio Sequenza, I've had that on my music stand for years, and I'm like, I don't know if it's good enough yet. But. So
you're a professional musician, so what is that schedule like for a professional musician? When do you practice? You get a new song? How does your schedule look?
I thrive on pressure, so I practice. I should be practicing more. I have 2 kids now. I have a 4-month-old and a 4-year-old. So I'm getting like maybe 5-10 minutes a day at this point, until about the week of shows, and then I'm like, I'm going hard right now. So I need a couple hours a day, and then it usually works out fine. So it varies on what my performance schedule is like. So
do you have a routine that you, before performances, is there like a routine that you have, things that you do prior to the performance in terms of leading up to that performance? How do you prepare?
First, I try making reads. That's the start. It's one of my least favorite things to do, so if I have like a gig spring up on me, it's usually I'm playing on like old stuff, because it takes about 3 or 4 days to get it ready, and then for me it takes about another week of breaking it in to even use it. So that's usually the first thing I do, is get into my reads. I figure out what the music is. I look through it, like what is going to be the most challenging. Like, do I have any solos that I know are going to be, pop up out of nowhere? You listen, you make a playlist if the music is pre-recorded. Sometimes it's not, and you just have to figure it out that way, just by looking at it. and then I just analyze, and then I get into practicing. So I try to break it down into small chunks before I do anything large. I start off slow, immediately go fast. I had a teacher in my graduate where it was like, you can practice slow all you want, but like as soon as you have to play it fast, you're gonna have to relearn it again because your muscles move differently. Everything moves differently. Your mind is gonna think about it differently. So like, I'm in the notion of, I play it slow like once, and then I break it down into very small pieces and go fast until it's like have it all done.
Has there ever been a time in a performance where you're playing and it's like, oh, that didn't go the way that I intended or I expected? Like, how do you recover from that, and did the audience even notice?
They usually don't,
Okay.
unless you stop. One thing is do not stop, just keep going. You know, not most things, but there are times where bad things happen. Like I remember I used to play at this gallery in New York, and the one thing I couldn't get over was our music just fell. It was like, what do you do? It's no recovering from that. We played a little bit longer, got to a pause point, and then like had to pick everything up. It's like embarrassing, and not even like a thing. Now we play iPads just so our music doesn't fall over the ground. But I've had, you know, performance moments that I do not like to think about. I think it's normal. It happens to everyone.
So we started to talk a little bit about high school, where we discussed the Civil Regiment. Were you in any other extracurricular activities while in high school?
Not really. I did lacrosse 1 year, and I did cross country another year. But band was kind of everything I was doing.
So the tuba, like, where did that come from? Like, what made you play the tuba? What started that?
I had to pick something. So I came to the first day of, I guess, like pre-register, like the freshman day of like band camp, and I had to pick something. I was in between percussion, and I saw the tuba, and I'm like, that would be fun. So I picked fun. I went with tuba. So. Did
you take it home to practice? Or wow.
Yeah, my mom was like, I played the mouthpiece outside, and she's just like, don't play that outside. She thought that sounded like farts. She was more embarrassed what the neighbors would think than me playing the tuba, like the mouthpiece outside. It was very strange, but I really liked it.
So if you can think back on your time at Lake Howell, was there a teacher that inspired you? Did you have a favorite teacher?
Oh, I took a lot of classes with Revis. Revis is one of my favorites. I tried to remember this math teacher that I had. She was Greek. She had a really long name. Miss Revis, do you know the name? Oh, God, she was amazing. I had her for algebra and I think geometry.
Krista Delitas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was amazing. I really loved her. I was not good at math. It was not one of the things I enjoyed doing. But like having her as a math teacher, like I joined the math club and I went and like tutored elementary school kids with her and like did that whole. It like made me take calculus in college, even though I didn't mean to take calculus in college. Just because it like, I don't know, she was just inspiring and just really like a good human. I really liked her.
So with all the experiences that you've gained from being a professional musician, going to college, being able to travel, you have quite an array of experiences and information. If you could go back in time and say something to that person that's in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, what would you say to that person, Beatriz?
I would say not everything has to be perfect all the time. If you have an idea and you were working on something, present it as it is, because it will bring joy to people. It might inspire others. It causes moments of collaboration with something that you might have just been hiding away for a longer period of time because you felt like it wasn't quite ready. And like I've learned that you never really feel ready at any moment. I've never been felt ready. But if you just go for it, usually good things come out of it. Sometimes you embarrass yourself, but that's okay too.
Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to hear you play.
Yeah, love to.
Thank you.
Thanks.